Hey, what's up, y'all? Steve here from Penguin Outdoors. Maybe you're new to kayaking and you could use a couple of tips. And we're here to send some your way.
We know what we have, let's hold on tight. Found what we're looking for in life. Call us crazy, but things are finally right. With you and I, the future is bright.
Alright, I'm here, I'm comfortable, and I've got my coffee. We're going to run through a couple of things that might be useful for new kayakers just joining the sport. I've had some friends and family members ask me recently if when they get a kayak, I would be willing to take them out and show them the ropes and teach them how to kayak. And to be honest, my first instinct when I'm asked these things is like, how hard is it? You sit in the kayak and you paddle. I mean, it's not exactly rocket science. But that's actually a pretty ignorant way of looking at it, and I've kind of come to realize that as I thought more and more about it. I'm not going to get too into paddling techniques because honestly there's a lot of videos out there, and obviously I'm not out on the water. I'm probably not the right person to show you anyway. But I'm just going to break down a couple of things that I think are important for new kayakers to know and to practice. The first up is PDF. The first up is PFD. Your life jacket. There's nothing wrong with wearing a PFD. It's the right choice. It's the smart choice. It doesn't make you less cool. It doesn't make you less of a man. Wear the thing, especially if you have kids and a family. I mean, I suppose if there's nobody waiting for you to come home, then you can do whatever you want, but think about your loved ones. It's not that big a deal. I like my automatic one. It's very comfortable. I did a separate video about the automatic ones and some cautionary notes, but I like my PFD. So that's all I'm going to say on that. You should have one, you should wear it. The second thing may not actually seem all that obvious, and it's hydration. See what I did there? Hydration is important with any physical activity, but especially with kayaking. Drink plenty of fluids. And come on guys, I'm not talking about beer. It's cool to have some beer, but I'm talking about water, Gatorade, things that actually hydrate you. You'd be surprised how much a lack of proper hydration really adds up when you're out there paddling and you're in the sun and there's the wind and there's the waves. It all adds up real quickly. Hydration's really important. Reentry. You need to practice this. If you're new to kayaking or you have a new kayak, and honestly, you should probably practice this at least like once a year anyway, because it's not always as easy as it sounds. You think, oh, my kayak flips over, I flip it back over, I get in. Well, if you've got a sit on top kayak, that's probably true. You get it flipped back over, you get yourself back in it. That alone is not always easy as it sounds. If you have a sit inside kayak, it changes things quite a bit, especially if you flip over in water where you can't reach the bottom to stand up. It can be near impossible to get the water out of a sit inside kayak without being on the shore. Sit on top kayaks are much easier for re-entry and recovery. Sit inside are much more difficult. Either one that you have, you need to practice it. You need to get out on the water in a shallow area where you can stand that's deep enough to give you a realistic idea, and you need to flip it over and you need to get back in it. It's not as easy as it sounds, especially if it's colder weather and you're wearing more clothes than maybe just like some swim trunks and maybe a pair of flip-flops or something. It can be very hard to pull yourself back onto that kayak, and the first time that you discover what that's like should not be in an emergency situation. You need to practice it in a controlled situation. Know your limits and know the limits of your kayak. Let's use a big lake like the Great Lakes or the ocean, something like that as an example. If you're going to head out there, keep a couple things in mind. Is my kayak made for this? Am I dressed properly? Have I packed the proper items? Can I swim this far? Think about that one. So you paddle out on the Great Lakes or the Atlantic Ocean or the Gulf, and you're going and going and going, and the kayak flips over and the kayak sinks. You've got a PFD, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Can you get yourself back to shore or to help? Not as easy as it sounds. It's really not. How many laps can you swim around your pool, if you have one, or the local pool? How many laps can you swim around it before you're too fatigued? Something to think about, isn't it? That kind of segues into two other things here. One, the buddy system. Guys, I kayak alone. I do it just like anybody else. This is mostly important on things like rivers. It's not as important in reservoirs, in estuaries, small ponds, things like that. It's still important, but man, it can really change on you in a river. I've got a safety video coming up pretty soon here. I recently went out to the Salt River here in northeast Missouri to do some fishing, and I misread the river. I've been kayaking since I was 11 years old. I'm 35 now. I completely misread the river. I got 2.5, 3 miles down the river, got kind of tangled up in something, had to go back against the current and realized exactly how much trouble I was in. I made it back, but I didn't have anybody with me. And actually, in that particular case, I didn't even have a cell phone because I got it wet on the 4th of July and the new one hadn't come in yet. I don't always make smart decisions. That's why I'm here to share my lack of knowledge with you. So that's one. Have a buddy. It's just a good plan. They make a SOS app. I can't remember what it's called. I'm sure there's several of them that you can put on your phone, and you can plug in exactly where you're going, what you're doing, when you're leaving, when you plan to be back. And if you tell the app, hey, I plan to be back at 4, and you don't check in, it will automatically notify the numbers that you program it to notify and say, hey, this is where so-and-so went. This is when they're supposed to be back. They haven't checked in yet. Here's my other point, and I call it distance traveled requires distance traveled. And what I mean by that, if you're putting it in a boat ramp on a river and you're paddling down a couple miles and exiting at a different point, that's great. If you're going out on a lake, on a river where you're going up current, coming back, etc., etc., if you have to return to the same point that you launched, keep in mind that the distance you travel is distance you have to travel again. It's so easy to get out there, especially for new kayakers, because you don't know your limit yet. It's easy to get out on the water and you're paddling along, like, man, this is easy, and 2 hours goes by and a couple miles go by and you're like, oh man, I'm doing good. But you forget that everything you travel, you now have to travel back. So maybe you start to feel fatigued, or maybe it doesn't even sneak up on you yet. And it's like, okay, it's time to go back. And now you're heading back, and now you're hitting the wall. Because you've traveled, the distance you've traveled was the distance you were capable of traveling, and now you have to travel it twice. It happens to new kayakers all the time. It's happened to me. It's happened to people that I know. Distance traveled is distance you must travel if you're returning to the same point that you launched. Transportation is something else that I want to cover. A good roof rack is worth its weight in gold, and bow and stern lines. Before I get too far into this, the SUV or car you have that has the two, what do you want to call them? We'll call it a roof rack, but those two bars on the roof for connecting things to, those are not adequate for putting kayak carriers on. Don't do it. You need to buy the cross beams that are built to connect to those, and then the kayak rack goes on those. Don't bolt the kayak rack straight to those. They'll rip off, they'll break. You're going to have a bad day. So anyway, I've had the two brand roof racks. I've had Yakko, whatever it was, and I've had Thule. I'm not impressed. Lots of people use them fine every single day. I'm not saying anything about them. I'm saying for me, I didn't like them. I felt that they were a little weak. I thought they were a little loud in some cases, at least in my application. And I didn't really like the way that they held the kayak. My roof rack is homemade. I posted a video about it if you want to build your own. Mine is very heavy duty, much cheaper than what those cost. And for me, is more secure, quieter, better for my kayak, just safer all the way around. But you make your own decision on that. But you need a quality roof rack no matter how you're going to do it. Whether you're going to build it yourself or buy one, you need a quality one. You need cam straps, not ratchet straps. Ratchet straps will damage your kayak. I know Billy Bob's been using them for 25 years and his granddaddy did the same thing and blah, 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 blah. I don't care. Cam straps are the way to go, not ratchet straps. If you're going to do something, do it right. The other thing here is the bow and stern lines. even if it's just a rope that you use to tie the front of the kayak to the front of the vehicle and the back of the kayak to the back of the vehicle, you need to use it. Bow and stern lines make all the difference. Kayaks catch wind and fly off of those roof racks on the highway all the time. I mean, bow and stern lines help reduce that. Also, if you have 3 kayaks, you need a setup capable of transporting 3 kayaks. You cannot have kayak racks on one side, kayak racks on another, with kayaks on it and a kayak in the middle. Okay, maybe you can. Maybe Billy Bob's been doing that too. Maybe it's his magical ratchet straps. However, I have seen more than a few times where people have done this and their kayaks end up on the highway or through someone's windshield. It's not worth it. Use bow and stern lines and use the proper equipment when you're transporting your kayak. A fun trip to the lake can go really bad really quickly, and that's kind of what all this is about. These are not the end-all be-all tips, and this is not a complete list. This is just a snapshot. Here's another one I want to use. Know the weather, know the conditions, don't bet against Mother Nature. There's an app called Rivercast. Rivercast will show you the trends and conditions of the river you're looking at paddling. So for example, the Salt River, there's a dam and they open and close, open and close, open and close. So if you look at it on Rivercast, it's like river down, river up, river down, river up. I mean, it literally looks like an EKG. It's insane. Whereas other ones like the South Fabi that I was just on yesterday, it's like, you know, pretty consistent. So if you get Rivercast, that may help you when you're going out on a river. Weather.gov is one of my favorite ones. I think they do a good job. Know what the weather forecast is going to be. If it says that severe thunderstorms are coming at 4 o'clock, expect to be off the water by noon maybe, or 2. Never bet against the weather, especially when you already see it start and turn. It's time to go. Even the wind. You would be surprised how much 1 to 2 mile per hour wind change can affect you when you're out on the water. When the wind is hitting that thing on the nose and you're paddling into it, you could stop paddling for a half a second and that wind just blows you. It's like being in this chair and just pivoting. Wind can really add up on you. I have a small portable weather radio. It costs, I don't know, it was under $20, and it's got 3 modes on it: off, on, and alert. And it's just like the weather radios you see in your house, the white square one that goes doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, lets you know when something's coming. There's a severe weather alert. It's the same thing. I keep it in the zipper jacket of my PFD on alert. If the National Weather Service puts out an alert and it's in my area, that thing triggers, tells me what's going on. I know to get my butt off the water. Really, guys, this sport is a ton of fun, but it's not as simple as just jumping in a kayak and going. Many of us did learn that way. It's how I learned. And it wasn't really until my younger brother asked me to show him the ropes of kayaking, and I sarcastically said, well, you get in and you paddle. And then later on, a couple hours later, I was thinking about it. I was like, man, that was really just not a fair response. It's not true. You can learn that way. I've learned many things in my life the hard way. Kayaking was one of them. Hopefully these tips have helped you, or maybe they will help you later. Like I said, I'm not the end-all be-all, but hopefully I helped. So guys, listen, stay safe out there, have fun, get your paddle on. That's what this is all about, man. Get out there, paddle on. We'll see you next time. Peace.